So we're going to do things maybe just a little bit different here in the sense we're going to kind of jump to the end. So we're going to actually demonstrate this in action. So I'm going to share my screen. We're going to run through kind of a quick exercise, and then we'll go behind the scenes and kind of look at the building blocks and the various components that make this work. So here we go. And sharing now. Let me know if you can see my screen, Brittany. Everybody, we good?
It is thinking, but it is, oh, there it is.
Great. Okay, so we are in ServiceNow. Just a quick note, of course, as we go through some of these steps, these exercises, of course, just be aware that depending on your version of ServiceNow, some of the views, some of the options may look a little bit different, of course. But where we're going to focus today, you can search for it. I've got a favorite here. Just look for AI Agent Studio. So we're going to pop into AI Agent Studio. And at the very top, if we can see a couple tabs, if you will, we have Overview, Create, and Manage, and Testing. And then there's a few other. We're going to drop into Testing. All right. Okay, we're going to start a manual test. AI agent or workflow. So in this case, what I'm going to do is that I would like to onboard. Oops, I did not select the workflow. Apologies. So the workflow I've selected is onboard collaboration user. And we're going to hit go. So we'll start this, and what you're going to see here is, we'll get into this in a minute. It's really cool. So you're going to see this orchestrator. You'll see this repeatedly as we work our way through this particular workflow. You're going to see the orchestrator piece kick in, and it's calling various aspects of this workflow that we've built. A couple things again off to the left, on the left-hand side, you're going to see the steps and actions, the logic, and then on the right side, you'll see more of the same. You'll see the actual components, the tools, etc., that are in use here. So in this case, we can see it says, okay, Chuck's not provisioned. Here we go, incur me flow. And would you like to proceed? It's, again, Chuck Farley exists in ServiceNow, but is not provisioned in incur me flow. Would you like to do so? So we're going to hit say yes. And again, as we move through these steps, you'll just see the kind of the two different branches, the little bit of the hierarchy. We'll look at this in a minute, the different aspects that drive this. And the key thing really that I want to emphasize throughout this is we're giving you an example of one specific workflow, right? So we've built this workflow to match probably the most common use case, right? User onboarding. We also built this workflow so that it's a very specific kind of step-by-step order. The point being, you could do this completely differently based on your needs, your environment, etc. So, all right, so now it's asking for kind of, hey, where is Chuck located? So I'm going to say Chuck is in New York. And so we have this really simple, straightforward dialogue. All our crafting are by design, back and forth with whoever's driving this or whoever's using it. We've tried to make it very, very simple and straightforward. Okay, there's our list of sites. We're going to say number one, yes. Give us just a minute. We'll have a couple more steps. The neat thing here, again, it's, if you were managing, for example, if you're the UC administrator, you could certainly run this yourself. Or if you wanted to offload this to, okay, now it's asking if we want PSTN. I'm going to say yes. If you wanted to offload this to your help desk, you could do that. If you wanted to make this self-service, users could, you could give them access to this and they could do self-provisioning. So possibilities are really kind of endless, and that's kind of like we like to think of what we're showing here is the art of the possible, is a kind of an expression I like to borrow. Again, this can be tuned and customized to your like. Okay, so again, prompting me asking different questions. You can see in this specific example, we've just built this out on the Flow backend. You can see, of course, UCM and Teams are the two primary. Could be WebEx, could be Zoom. It just depends on your needs and your environment. I'm going to say number one. So just a UCM basic profile, which is, again, kind of a package we build in the backend within Flow. And then I think the last step we'll see here, I believe it just is going to ask for a telephone number.
So
yes.
Jesse,
Please. Yeah.
it sounds like we've got success here. I do just want to chime in and say, Jesse mentioned you could, enable other teams to use the chat. Again, I just want to remind people we are in the testing side of this, so it looks very different than what it would look like on the front end if you were to, say, assign this to the help desk to do. And then the other thing I wanted to reiterate is, it does seem like, it's a lot of questions. That is how we have programmed the agent. Is it the agentic workflow or the actual agent to ask these questions?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Exactly.
Which again, once we finish this example, we will actually go into the build. We'll talk about the architecture a bit, and then we'll go into the build. But it looks like we're making good progress here. What's going on?
Yeah, exactly. So that last step, you could probably see it's basically giving me a summary of the user, the site where he's going to be located, the profile or the package he'll have, and then the phone number. So it's kind of finalizing these things. We should be done here in just a minute, and then we'll go kind of behind the scenes and take a look at how this all was built, how it works. The cool thing is too, and I'll tie this. We'll see this in a minute, but of course this is ServiceNow. So part of way we build this is of course you're going to have a ticketing, the ticketing aspect of this. So we'll demonstrate both from the ServiceNow side as well as the Flow side, the logging and the ticketing. So everything is tracked, everything has a record. So again, from just kind of a governance perspective, tracking and logging all the way through. So that's extremely important. I know that's more and more of a key item, a hot item that we encounter all the time. Let's see, we're going to finish. Checking on remaining steps. So we'll hang tight a little bit longer. This is taking a little bit longer than normal. If this goes much longer, we'll just pop right into the back end. What do you think, Brittany?
Yeah, we could talk about the architecture while it's thinking. I will say I don't, I think this just must be the test environment. Yep. But let's jump into the architecture and walk people through more what's going on there, and you can work with it as it's thinking. I think again, because it's following the steps and it's showing you the test is probably taking a little bit longer than expected. Your users on the front end won't experience that lag. It's prerequisites first. What do we need to do this?
Yeah, exactly. So pretty simple and straightforward in the sense that, of course, Flow is, again, go back to that diagram we showed earlier. Flow is right there at the heart of this. That is the engine that's driving all the UC automation. And then along with that, on the ServiceNow side, we have the Flow integration app and the Now Assist panel. So those are kind of the key aspects here that we need to get started.
And now we dive into the architecture.
Yes, exactly. So pictures usually help. So what we're about to explore, what we're about to show you, excuse me, in terms of the building blocks and how this works, this is somewhat simplified, but it's really, really accurate. So kind of going left to right, if you will. On the left, you have that experience, the chat, again, that kind of natural conversational side of things that the end user is experiencing, which based on how you've built it is going to call a certain workflow in ServiceNow. So you can see, again, going left to right, we have an onboard in a ServiceNow column there in the middle. We have an onboard collaboration user workflow. We'll look at that in a minute. And then that workflow contains or points to two specific agents. And again, we'll look at that. And then in turn, the agents are basically calling or using that Kermi integration app. So you can see those on the far right column, which then to the far right, the arrow, that's all ServiceNow all speaking to Flow via API. So in terms of user experience and processing, it's kind of left to right here as we're looking at the diagram. But in the build process, it's more right to left. We have to make sure that integration app is in place. That gives us the tools we'll build. They're based on that integration app. Then we build the agent and then the workflow. So it's still running for some reason. So we're just going to move beyond the test, and I apologize. It's kind of hung up there, it looks like in this case. So, all right, I'm gonna switch over to my screen again, ready if you're good, Brittany, and then we'll
Yep.
look here at.
Nothing like a live test to really keep you on your toes.
Oh, of course. Yep. All right, so we're back here, great, and you can see, so down below here, we've got two different tabs, AI agentic workflows and AI agents. Again, build process, just keep in mind as we step into this, there's really three primary elements or aspects to the way this works. And that's going to be workflow, an agent, and a tool. So when we're building this, we'd actually build the tools first, point the agent at those, create the agent next, and point the agent at those tools, and then finally point the agent, the workflow, create the workflow, and point the workflow at the agent. So bear with me, I'm going to drop down here. You can see onboard collaboration user. This is the one we just used, and we'll kind of get a sense of this. All right, so here's our onboard collaboration user workflow. And you can see kind of at the very top, we have a very nice kind of structured description and an order and what the processing, how the processing all works. And as we scroll down, now we've obviously pre-populated, pre-built this, and you'll see description and steps here listed. This is so important as we kind of step our way through this, with really any AI kind of workflow or process, you can never overemphasize the importance of just planning and careful thought into what the outcome is intended to be. I often use the measure twice, cut once kind of thought process logic, and that really applies here. So the more time, the more planning you put into this up front, the better. But you can see here, again, based on what we're reading, what we see here, the list of steps are basically two. The first is to analyze the user. We're basically looking at both Flow and ServiceNow saying, okay, what's the current state of this employee? Do they exist? Do they not exist? Maybe they exist in ServiceNow, but not, Flow, etc. So that's the first step, is to do a simple analysis. And then the second is the actual user onboarding. And this is kind of where the good stuff happens, so to speak. Okay, so continuing to scroll down, we can now see, based on those two steps, we now have the two AI agents that are part of this workflow. Again, keep in mind, this is our example here. You could build and do this differently based on your needs and your environment. So as I mentioned just a minute ago, the first, it's kind of on the bottom here, but let's take a look at this. And that's the user analysis agent. So let's take a look there. And just as we spoke to earlier, you can see it's doing kind of just what it sounds like. Retrieves and validates employee data from ServiceNow and Flow. And then going down a bit further, role and required steps. Again, really, really, really important. So the way, if you notice, the way I started that conversation was, I would like to onboard, so-and-so. And all that comes back to how you've built this, how your descriptions work, your roles, your list of steps, etc. So you can see what we're doing. We're assigning this AI agent a role with a great amount of detail and a lot of specific order here. And then along with that, the list of steps. So we have global rules. I'm not going to read through this, but you can kind of see the way we've structured this. And there's a very specific order. You could build this in such a way that, there's maybe just a prompt or two or a chat or two, and it's off and running. We wanted to make this very specific in terms of, find out the time zone, find out the site, which UC package do you want, and so there's a bit more order or steps in that regard. But again, you could structure this and build this your own, to your own liking. So that, yeah, go ahead, Brittany. It looks like
this is a great time to mention we do have all of this specific agent in a guide that we're happy to share when you're ready to start building your own AI agents within ServiceNow integrated with Flow.
Perfect.
So we do have that guide available. And one other interesting comment, just thinking about this, and it's so important, looking at the descriptions and how detailed everything is. Some of that is like, oh, whoa, like, do I need to be a developer to do this? Not necessarily. Again, I think prompting is its own art. But if you do have your developers, your ServiceNow developers building this, your UC expertise is extremely important, and understanding how Flow is set up is also extremely important. So you're going to have to collaborate or kind of marry the art here of you've got, your agent developing as well as your collaboration expertise kind of.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Great points. Thank you, Brittany. That's awesome. Yeah, and I like to use the word crafting because it really is this process and this practice of design, careful thought into your workflows, your use cases, and then what do I want out of this? So all this was, as you can see, very carefully thought out. And then once you come into ServiceNow, honestly, and you're building this, it's a copy and paste exercise. So the actual build process is pretty simple and straightforward for the most part. But again, it depends on your situation. So back to this particular, this agent. Again, this is the user analysis agent. We've seen kind of the steps, the rules, and then now if we drop down to tools. So again, keep in mind what I said earlier, where it's workflow points to an agent, points to a tool. So inside that agent that we were just looking at, here are the tools. Really, in this case, just the two. So we have a flow specific tool, which is find collaboration user, basically looking into the flow environment saying, hey, does this user exist? And then doing the same thing on the ServiceNow side. So pretty simple, straightforward. Again, on this first part of the workflow, it's this user analysis piece. Let's back up a step and then we'll look at the other parts. So, all right, so that was the user analysis agent that we just looked at right there. And now let's look at the second agent. So again, this particular workflow, just two agents. This agent is the onboarding agent, Kermi. So let's tap on that. And again, you can see just we'll do a quick review. You have the description. This is where you can see again, and this is doing the action. First one is doing an analysis, reading, analyzing. This is creating, this is updating, etc. And once more, we're very specific about role and required steps. Just kind of, I'm not going to read this, but you can kind of get a sense as I scan through the level of order and detail and specificity, if I can say that right. I did it. Wow. It's really cool. So that's our again the core of this particular agent. And then if we look at the tools down below, same pattern, same order. Now again, we have a couple different sections. One is flow. So these are the actions that are taking place in flow. And once more, these particular tools are made possible through that Kermi integration app. So it's actually that Kermi integration app that is kind of driving these specific actions. And you can see, again, we're checking to see what collaboration profiles, packages, could be Zoom, could be WebEx, Teams, etc. We're finding the user, we're getting the sites. It's all very, very specific flow actions here. And then we drop down here and we have more ServiceNow specific actions. So here we're creating and then retrieving the ticket as a result of this. So that's also very, very important here. Obviously the bulk of this, if you think about it, is the UC aspect, but we need that ticket. We need to initiate and kind of close out that aspect as well. And then further down here, and just bear with me, I'm just calling out these one by one. the actual creation, again, happening in Flow, and that's made possible through the Flow integration app. And then finally, the knowledge graph piece. So this is, again, going back to the analysis and retrieving the information from ServiceNow. So you can kind of see a mixture of both, flow actions, flow components, and then, native or internal ServiceNow pieces that are taking place here. So let's go ahead and pause there for a minute. I'm going to back up. And I'm curious. I'm going to do this. I think that's kind of the overview of, again, the building blocks. So just to summarize one more time, you have the workflow that points to your agents. Agents use tools, which are made possible through the Kermi Flow integration app. And that's really how this all works together. I'm going to pop back up to testing. I am curious if it shows, if Chuck ever, oh, we're back at the beginning. Okay, well, all right, let's.
Oh, I think because you maybe X'd out a bit.
I left the screen, exactly.
It didn't continue the test.
Okay, well, okay, back to you, Brittany. Sorry about that.
Well, before we continue, actually, do you have an example? Because I see the flow tab open. Do you have an example of a user who we provisioned earlier through ServiceNow, just so we can show kind of the tracking there?
Yep, let's do this. Our instance here. Okay, so no, good question. What we should see again in that AI agent window, we should see everything come to completion, including a ServiceNow ticket. But then also on the flow side, if we drop in here, let me go under daily management flow users, we'll see a list of users that have been onboarded or provisioned. Actually, I'm going to scroll down and see if it actually finished. Chuck, it did finish. Okay, so Chuck was completed. My guess is if we would have held on a little bit longer, we would have had the summary there. But if we look at Chuck Farley, here he is. We'll see kind of the information he's got. He's got a phone number. He's in New York, et cetera, et cetera. And as I pointed out earlier, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of jumping around a bit, but if we go under report, this is where part of the goodness comes in. Go down to tickets, and you'll see this latest instance. That should be me. So let's click on that incident. Yes, exactly. Request. Here we go. That is our tracking number. And this was completed thanks to the onboarding agent by Kermi. So again, it's just really awesome, really powerful, because you have what, and let me scroll down actually a little bit. So this was completed, Chuck was onboarded. And if we scroll down, you can see a lot of the detail that was taking place in Flow, in this case, in call managers. So lines, devices, users, all this stuff automated via Flow. And I was, just in that little agent typing away. So really, really powerful, really simple. And again, tracking, ticketing throughout. So total visibility into what's going on here. So
that is great. And, it's always great to have the reassurance that something was completed in the other platform, as well as just, we can audit here. And let's say if Chuck was accidentally given the wrong package, we could easily just roll back in Flow.
Yep, exactly.
So a lot of guardrails, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a second.